prove that representation is only part of the fight, not the entire fight. If you really want to get into it, but Obama's representation was mostly built on him being able to conform to white audiences and being able to code switch. Like, I don't think Obama would have been president if he didn't know how to code switch. Don't at me. And there's been a mixture of reactions to the celebration of Kamala Harris as our first black woman vice president. I see a lot of Kamala praise and Yas queening, and I even see attempts at dethroning. And I guess there's also Kamala stands, but they're boring. We're not talking about them. And these damaging portrayals and stereotypes aren't just done by white Hollywood movie makers either. There's a lot of black filmmakers who do this too. How many times have you seen a black guy dressed in a wig pretending to be a black woman for clout? Hi, I'm Ranting Minority. Welcome back to my channel where I do social and political commentary. So it's been about a month or so. Yeah, it's been about a month since Joe Biden was elected president and Kamala Harris as his vice president. And since then, there's been a mixture of reactions to the celebration of Kamala Harris as our first black woman vice president. People who are just happy to see a woman vice president who think this is proof of society becoming more racially tolerant. On the other hand, there's people who think it's performative bullshit to take away from real issues. And on the third hand, I guess, we have people who think black representation is beginning of the white genocide. And I guess there's also Kamala stands, but they're boring. We're not talking about them. But we're going to talk about all three of those first groups. I'm going to make as nuanced of a take I can on the celebration of our first woman vice president. Because as you all know, when it comes to race issues, I am the final authority. God said so. It's your first time here, maybe subscribe. What do you gain by subscribing, you might ask? When I inevitably reach 1 billion subscribers, no, 10 billion subscribers, you can be able to say, I was subscribed when you had less than 2,000 subscribers. Need I say more? And nobody can take that away from you, except you if you unsubscribe, I guess, but you wouldn't do that. Because everyone who watches my videos is cool, and since you're watching my video, you're obviously cool, right? Yeah. And there's also donation links in the bio if you're feeling generous. But with all that being said and my subpar humor out of the way, we can get into this video. Since the inauguration of Vice President Kamala Harris, this conversation of representation has become a hot topic again. I've already talked a little bit about the importance of representation, or importance of good representation rather, in my Ben Shapiro response, which you should definitely watch. But I feel like the damages of bad representation are still worth addressing. In this video, I basically want to sympathize with the people who are happy to see a woman black vice president, and I also want to address how representation can be used in misleading or just harmful ways. So first, let's address why people are happy. It's no secret that black representation in the US government is sparse, right? And in media, it can be hit or miss, mostly missing, especially when it comes to black women. I'm assuming you all know the stereotype of an angry black woman, but what came before that and how does it relate to now? Does bad or good representation matter? All questions to be answered in this very video that you are watching right now. I touched a bit on this in my Ben Shapiro response, but black Americans, specifically black men, are overrepresented in stories about crime on the news, typically shown in more criminally ways. Being a black man in America, that type of representation is kind of what you get used to. Take this totally unrelated skit, for example.
Yo, what up, fellas?
Feels so good to finally audition for a show with all black writers.
Yes, no more thug number one, drug dealer number two. We got characters with names, backstories, multiple dimensions.
Hey, you know what that sounds like, right?
Progress.
Hey, what up? What up? What up? Tonight, Rocky Great. Yeah!
What's this character's backstory?
He's a drug dealer who's pursuing a rap career, but he's lazy about it.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! I'm an unarmed black man, no!
But what about black women? How is there a representation outside of Kamala giving my goddamn $2,000 right now, Harris? Well, from my own research and experience, it's trash, it's garbage, it's filthy. And I'm gonna tell you why with the help of minimal Googling and logic. Okay, it wasn't minimal Googling. I actually spent a lot of time reading a lot of stuff, but people love when you undercut your own jokes. Ranting Minority, that's awesome. Okay, it's February, so how about some black history, right? Yeah, you cool with that? I'm cool with that. So, historically, black women, like black men, have been treated lesser than in many contexts. In the sciences or the medical field, they were treated as lesser than human. They used to experiment on them with no anesthesia or anything. This is how gynecology was birthed. There used to be this belief that black women had a bigger pain tolerance, so they thought it was okay. America. And they're also treated as lesser than in pop culture with like stereotypes and damaging portrayals, which we'll be talking more about today. You see, black female oppression is produced and reproduced through invisibility and systemic issues. Notice I said and, not only. They're less likely to hold elected official positions, high-profile jobs. They're among many missing in pop culture images. A lot of black feminist scholars argue that their marginality is underscored by a lack of presence in the media. However, when black women's experiences are visible in the media, they lack a full range of human experience and emotions, and overall achievement is usually just like caricatures or stereotypes. See, for many people, films, TV, media, news, or whatever is pretty much the only connection they have to black women. So this shapes their opinion and view of them. And when most of the media and films and stuff you're consuming is telling you or showing you a damaging portrayal of a black woman or a stereotypical portrayal of a black woman, you're more likely to hold that position or hold that belief if you don't really know many black women. And this idea of the stereotypes of the black woman goes all the way back to a long time ago. You see, we have the Jezebel, which is pretty much an over-sexualized, very promiscuous black woman who only has a weapon in her sexuality and her power over men. This helps society excuse the constant sexual exploitation of black female slaves. Fear of beginning the stereotype often causes black women to deny human sexual urges to prove propaganda about them wrong. We also have the mammy, which was born and gone with the wind, if I'm not mistaken. See, the anti-blackness in the whole mammy stereotype basically comes from the expectation of how black women should relate to families, partners, churches, employees, always giving, never taking, and usually when you have like a mammy character in media, they're always throwing their back out for a white family.
You is smart. You is important. You is smart. You is kind. You is important. That's so good.
You have the Sapphire, which we're all probably more familiar with, or lately we call her the angry black woman. You don't have to look very hard to find a stereotype in media.
Byron, I want my money.
What are you talking about?
Byron.
Stop. Listen, we ain't together, okay?
Ashley W., author of The Angry Black Woman, The Impact of Prerogative Stereotypes in Psychotherapy with Black Women, describes the myth of the angry black woman that characterizes these women as angry, aggressive, ill-tempered, illogical, overbearing, hostile, and ignorant without provocation. I don't know if I have to explain why the angry black woman caricature or stereotype is a bad thing. I'm assuming you can gripe with that yourself. But the Sapphire trope comes from this old-ass show called Amos and Andy, with the character Sapphire, who is just an angry black woman.
Guess you think you could cook, clean, and get along just fine all by yourself.
I does.
I tried to reach you all over town. What's the idea of coming in here at the last minute with my coat?
So basically the idea of this trope is no matter how nice and petite a black woman is, she's always suspected of being angry or overbearing or some dumb shit. More recent example, maybe you remember Michelle Obama being rumored to be a man. There's this whole thing with Serena Williams when she got mad at the umpire and then she broke her racket and then it all blew up and then there was this terrible cartoons made about her. The angry black woman is always present in some type of media where black women are. And you have the matriarch, or the black woman head of household. This is the subtle shot they use at black women when they discuss fatherless homes. See, unquestioning belief in this type of assessment of black women not being able to raise their own kids pretty much greenlights demonizing them and their children, which has been done. We all can hear about the fatherless home statistics, even though America as a whole has been marrying less. So these type of media stereotypes are pretty much why movies like Birth of a Nation were so popular, because they play into people's racial prejudices and confirm them basically. But in a more recent study from Loyola University, they examined the portrayals of black women in recent media, and they found a few themes they typically stick to. And damaging depictions of black women were present in all the films they utilized in the study. One of the themes they tend to stick to was the ideology of family, specifically motherhood and the position women hold in larger family structure, stylizations and interpretation of social class through the lens of occupation and personal style, and heteronormativity, specifically gender roles and word count within the film in comparison to male counterparts. All are reproduced and shaped in methods meant not only to mirror reality, but reiterate a damaging perception and approach to black womanhood. And these damaging portrayals and stereotypes aren't just done by white Hollywood movie makers either. There's a lot of black filmmakers who do this too. How many times have you seen a black guy dressed in a wig pretending to be a black woman for clout? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you dressing as a woman. That's obviously fine. My issue is usually when they do this, they're always being a stereotype of the aggressive black woman or the angry black woman. It's like, can you not? Black filmmakers and content creators or whatever continuing to push this narrative about black women. How can we really expect white Hollywood producers to be more open and progressive about it? So when black people or black women are shown in the media in a more positive light, I appreciate it. So I think that covers the reason people would be excited about Kamala. But why are people either unimpressed or vehemently opposed to Kamala? Well, there are about 2 to 3 type of Kamala opposers I've noticed. We're going to talk about the more obvious one first, you know, the ones who don't like Kamala because she's a black woman. So representation in government by black people hasn't always been readily accepted by American people. Shocker, I know. So historically, there's been times when black people in government have created fear among some Americans, and sometimes this fear causes them to even go as far as to stage coup. I'm actually not talking about the DC Coat Fest, but there are some similarities. I'm actually talking about the Wilmington Insurrection of 1898. So basically, long story short, in Wilmington, North Carolina, there was this duly elected fusionist government. The fusionists were basically Republicans and other different government officials. And they're mostly like a mixed race party. Do I need to explain the party switch? You all took third grade government, I hope. But anyway, so as a response, with the help of racist representation in the media, pushing the narrative of black criminality, when this first came out, they actually tried to push the narrative that it was a black riot and black people started it, but it came out later that actually wasn't the case. So with the help of that and white supremacists and these southern white Democrats, they staged a coup and overthrew the government, or overthrew Wilmington, North Carolina's fusionist government, rather. They ignored opposition and destroyed the property and businesses of black citizens built up since the Civil War, including the only black newspaper in the city, and killed an estimate of 60 to more than 300 people. It's been described as the only incident of its kind in American history. Well, until like a month ago, I guess. See this being done, you know, when we get our first black female vice president. It's just a little bit sus, you know. But let's talk about more performative representation and black faces being used to do the work of white supremacy. You see, just being black isn't good enough for representation. I think people sometimes expect black government officials to have the best interests of most black Americans, but that's not always the case. And I think people should keep this in mind when expecting Kamala Harris to do anything for black Americans. Plenty of high-profile black Americans who have done the work of white supremacy and used their black faces as a shield from criticism. And who's to say our elected officials won't do the same? And this is where I explain how representation can be used to halt progress sometimes. You see, back in the day, there's a certain black man who really pissed off a lot of activists. And I think he can be used as a perfect example of this. And that man is Booker T. Washington. You see, Booker T gave this speech in Atlanta, which people call it the Atlanta Compromise. The speech was problematic and people still disagree over it today like they did back then. Or people just straight up lie about the reaction people had to it back in the day.
As he put it, no race that has anything to contribute to the markets of the world is long in any degree ostracized. When he ended his speech, the large audience, a mix of blacks and whites, broke out in loud and sustained cheering. W.E.B. Du Bois, a leading black intellectual, captured the sentiment. He wrote in the black newspaper, The New York Age, that Washington's speech might be the basis of a real settlement between whites and blacks in the South.
W.E.B. Du Bois did not say that. Fuck pray you. Hi, me from the future editing this. So the quote this book is actually from his book, The Souls of Black Folk, and it actually came in a few days ago, so I just want to read the full quote from the book and get a little more context, because I love proving PragerU wrong, even though it's extremely easy. Washington distinctly has black people give up, at least for the present, three things. First, political power. Second, insistence on civil rights. And third, higher education of Negro youth. His doctrine has tended to make whites, North and South, shift the burden of the Negro problem to the Negro shoulders and stand aside as critical and rather pessimistic spectators, when in fact the burden belongs to the nation. And the hands of none of us are clean if we bend not our energies to righting these great wrongs. So basically, W.B. Du Bois believed Booker T. Washington's view on this basically shifted the problems of the time onto black people when the problems were caused by the nation, which is kind of what happens now. But anyway, just thought you wanted to hear the full quote from the actual book, and with that being said, back to the video. Bye-bye. He went on advocating for civil rights in his own way and ended up starting the NAACP around 1909. Anyway, you're probably wondering what the speech was about, but basically it was pretty much an argument that black people back then should obtain rights and respect through hard work and friendship, and avoiding any confrontational tactics for civil rights. Basically, Booker T thought if we just worked real hard, eventually all racism would go away and we'd all be friends with the white people. That was a very simplistic summarization, but it gave that vibe, to be honest. And a few notable black civil rights activists back then took a huge issue with this. Charles Cheston, another well-known civil rights activist back then, responded to this in his book, The Color Line. I have no confidence in a friendship of whites which is to take the place of rights, and no expectation of justice at their hands unless it is founded on law. If the white South will continue to ignore the Constitution and violate the laws, it must be with no consent of mine. I want my rights and all of them. And I do not believe in silent submission to any form of injustice. And that pretty much sums up my view as well. About a decade later, the Atlanta race riots happened, and W.E.B. Du Bois believed that this whole riot was caused partially by Booker T. Washington's friendship over rights speech. Nowadays, I see a lot of Kamala praise and Yas queening, and I even see attempts at dethroning. And while representation is getting better for black people in politics, I'd say we still have a long way to go. I don't think it's wrong to be excited for our black female vice president, but Kamala Harris has added to a lot of issues that many black Americans are protesting against right now in their time as a prosecutor. I'm old enough to remember people thinking this same type of mindset when Obama was elected, and now I think people don't feel the same.
All of that superficial stuff that means so much to so many fellow citizens. And what happens? What happens is we got a neo-fascist gangster in the White House who really doesn't care for the most part. You got a neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party that is now in the driver's seat with the collapse of Brother Bernie. And they don't really know what to do because all they want is show more black faces, show more black faces. But oftentimes these black faces are losing legitimacy too, because the Black Lives Matter movement emerged under a black president, black attorney general, and black Homeland Security, and they couldn't deliver.
I think Obama was also good in a way that he proved that representation is only part of the fight, not the entire fight. If you really want to get into it, but Obama's representation was mostly built on him being able to conform to white audiences and being able to code switch. Like, I don't think Obama would have been president if he didn't know how to code switch. Don't at me. But who knows, maybe Kamala Harris will do great things in 2024 and I'll have to eat my words. We'll see. If she does run for president in 2024, I just want to call it now. They're probably going to call her man. They're going to call her man. Anytime a black woman gets in office, they always call her man. All in all, does representation matter? I'd say yes, but it's only part of the fight. And is Kamala Harris good representation for black Americans? I'd say optically, I guess, but really, if you want to say she's going to be like helpful to black Americans, I think the actual answer is probably more in the air. To see a black female vice president, wish it would have been someone other than Kamala, but happy nonetheless. But I still don't think that frees her of criticism by any means. She may not be Trump or Pence, but we can still criticize her. Okay, that's the end of this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, comment, and all the generic YouTube things people say. And may your vibes be chill.